What's the matter, Private? Boots too heavy for those weak legs? The barracks roared with laughter as Sergeant Ramirez's voice cut through the stale morning air. I stood there, sweat dripping down my back, holding my push-up halfway off the ground. My arms shook, not from weakness, but from the weight of 100 eyes watching. Every boot heel thumped in rhythm against the concrete floor, every smirk carved into my skin like a blade. I wanted to disappear, to sink into the cracks of that barracks floor. But the Army doesn't let you disappear. You stand there, and you take it. I was the new guy, Private David Carter. My boots weren't new. They were scuffed, handed down from my cousin who'd worn them overseas. My accent was thick, southern, something that made the others laugh every time I opened my mouth. "You're never gonna make it," Corporal Henderson sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "The Army's not for charity cases." The squad laughed again. Some shook their heads, others just stared, enjoying the show. And me? I kept my eyes on the floor, jaw tight, because talking back was suicide. That night, when the lights went out and the snoring started, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The smell of polish and sweat hung heavy in the air. Rows of boots lined perfectly by bunks, uniforms folded with surgical precision. Everything screamed order, discipline, brotherhood, except for me. I was the outsider. I heard whispers in the dark. Dead weight. Liability. They didn't bother lowering their voices. It was meant for me, and I took it, because what else could I do? Morning came with the sound of boots on concrete and Ramirez barking us into formation. We ran drills until the world blurred. Mud swallowed our boots, rain stung our eyes, but when I stumbled, Ramirez was there to let everyone know. Pathetic, Carter. My grandmother runs faster with a walker. Laughter again, that same rhythm pounding in my ears. Every stumble I made fed their doubts. Every insult planted another seed of shame. I swallowed it down, all of it, because that's what you do when you got nothing left but grit. But not everyone laughed. I caught Miller's eyes once. Just once. He was a quiet one, always kept to himself. He didn't defend me, but he didn't join the laughter either. He just watched a flicker of something, pity maybe, or recognition, before he turned away. That single look was more than I'd gotten from anyone else. It didn't make me stronger, but it kept me from breaking completely. Sometimes all you need is someone noticing you're still there. Later in the mess hall, I sat alone with my tray. Henderson and his buddies made a point of walking past, one of them kicking the leg of my chair, so I spilled half my food. "Clean that up, charity case." The room chuckled. I bent down, scooping up mashed potatoes with my bare hand, cheeks burning. Nobody offered to help. Nobody ever did. Except I noticed Miller again, across the room. He didn't move, didn't say a word, but his eyes followed the scene. He looked like he wanted to stand up, but thought better of it. He stayed seated. And me? I forced down the cold potatoes like it didn't matter. In those days, I carried one thing that kept me sane. A small locket tucked under my shirt with a picture of my father. He'd been a soldier once, a decorated one. Folks said he was tougher than nails, but the Army buried him before I was old enough to understand what that meant. Every time I felt myself breaking, I'd grip that locket until it cut into my palm. I'd remind myself he made it through worse. So would I. The worst moment came one night during locker inspection. Ramirez held up my boots, worn thin at the soles. "Whose are these? Carter's?" "Figures." He tossed them down like trash. "Look at this, men. You think a soldier can march into war with garbage like this?" The barracks erupted again, Henderson smirking in the corner. I stood there barefooted, staring at those boots on the ground. The last piece of family I carried with me. My father's boots. They didn't shine like the others, but they'd walked through fire before I ever put them on. I bent down, picked them up slow, and set them back in line. My hands shook, but my voice stayed steady. "They'll get me where I need to go, Sergeant." The room went silent for half a second, just half, before Ramirez barked a laugh. "We'll see about that, Private." That was the night I realized humiliation wasn't the end of me. It was fuel. I lay in bed listening to the rain hammer the tin roof, clutching that locket, staring at those boots. Something in me hardened. They thought I was weak. They thought I didn't belong, but I knew better. Somewhere deep inside, I knew a time was coming when they'd see me differently, when those boots would carry me further than they could imagine. I thought that was the end of it. Just another night of shame, another day of mockery waiting. But what I never expected was how fast everything could change, and how one moment, one test, would flip this whole story upside down. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. Rain came down in sheets that morning, pounding the training field until the mud swallowed our boots. Sergeant Ramirez's voice cut through the storm like a knife. "Carter, you're dragging this squad down. Move faster." My legs burned, lungs on fire, every step heavier than the last. The others sprinted ahead, splashing through puddles, laughing when I slipped and went face first into the muck. I could hear Henderson's voice over the storm. "Told you, he ain't cut out for this." They didn't see the way my hands clenched into fists, hidden by the mud. I wasn't going to quit. Not for them, not for Ramirez, not for anyone. After formation, we stumbled into the barracks soaked through, uniforms plastered to our skin. Steam rose from the heaters, but the cold never left my bones. I peeled off the wet blouse, hung it up with the others, and caught Henderson's sneer from across the room. "You smell like a pig pen, Carter. Maybe you should have signed up for farm duty." The squad laughed again, their voices bouncing off the cinder block walls. I didn't answer. I just grabbed the old towel hanging at the edge of my bunk and dried myself off, eyes low. Silence was my shield, but it cut deep every time. The chow hall was no better. The long metal tables buzzed with voices, trays clattering, boots echoing on the tile. I sat at the far end, the seat no one else wanted. Henderson and his buddies strutted past, making sure everyone saw when he accidentally tipped my milk onto the floor. The white puddle spread at my feet. "Guess you don't need it," he said, smirking as his buddies laughed. I bent down to wipe it up, but before I could finish, a hand slid something across my tray. An extra protein bar. I looked up. Miller. He didn't say a word, didn't even make eye contact, just kept eating, head down. But I noticed. That small gesture stuck like a spark in the dark. Night came, and with it another trial. Night fire training. We lined up in the dirt, rifles slick with rain. The sergeant barked instructions while tracers lit the field. My rifle jammed. My stomach dropped. Henderson snorted, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Figures, can't even fire his weapon." The sergeant was on me in an instant. "Carter, you're a disgrace to this uniform. Fix it or pack your bags." My fingers shook, mud caked on the receiver, but I forced the bolt back, cleared the jam, and fired. The kick rattled through my shoulder, steady this time. The target dropped, but the damage was done. I could still feel the laughter burning behind me, the words, disgrace, echoing long after the firing stopped. I wanted to quit that night. Lying in my bunk, the smell of gunpowder still in my nose, I thought about walking away, about telling the sergeant they were right. But then I pulled out the letter tucked in my footlocker, my mom's handwriting, shaky but strong. "Your father stood tall when others doubted him. So will you. Don't let their voices be louder than your heart." I read it 3 times. I pressed the locket in my hand until the edges dug into my skin. And for the first time since I got there, I whispered to myself, I won't give them what they want. The next morning, the rain hadn't stopped. We were on the ropes course, water streaming down every surface, wood slick like glass. Ramirez barked at us to climb, shouting louder than the thunder. I climbed, every muscle screaming, mud slipping under my grip. Halfway up, I noticed the frayed edge of the safety line above me. I froze. "Sergeant," I shouted, rain choking my voice. "This line's not secure." Ramirez glared up at me like I'd cursed him. "Shut your mouth and climb, Carter. No excuses." The squad laughed again, Henderson yelling, "Always whining." I swallowed the words and kept climbing, but I knew something bad was coming. By the time the sun dropped, the field was a swamp. We dragged ourselves back to the barracks, boots squishing, bodies wrecked. Henderson made sure to throw one more shot my way. "Hey, Charity Case, you gonna cry to your mom again tonight?" My blood boiled, fist tightening at my side. For a moment I wanted to swing, just one punch. But I didn't. I turned, grabbed my boots, and scrubbed them until the leather caught the dim light. They were old, battered, but they meant something. They meant survival. I'd earned respect not with my fists, but with the miles those boots would carry me. Days blurred together, drills bleeding into each other, sweat soaking every stitch of fabric. I ran extra laps after lights out, mud sucking at my feet, lungs begging for mercy. Nobody saw it, nobody cared, but I did it anyway. Every night I came back to the barracks so exhausted I could barely stand. Henderson mocked me more, called me ghost because I was always gone, always sneaking in late. But Miller knew. He saw the mud caked on my uniform when no one else did. One night, as I collapsed onto my bunk, he muttered just loud enough to hear, "Keep pushing, Carter." That was all. 3 words, but they lit a fire stronger than any insult could smother. The pressure never let up. Inspections were brutal, drills unending. But somewhere in that grind, I changed. My arms thickened, my run times dropped, my focus sharpened. They still mocked me, still threw their cheap shots, but their words didn't sink as deep anymore. I was building something under the surface, piece by piece. They couldn't see it yet, but it was there. And deep down, I waited for the moment when everything would shift. That moment came during a late-night rappel drill. The storm hadn't let up all week, ropes slick, boots sliding. Ramirez stood at the bottom shouting, "Move, move, move!" Henderson went first, cocky as ever, cracking jokes as he clipped in. Halfway down, I heard the sound that froze my blood. A snap. His safety line frayed where I'd seen the damage before. My heart slammed against my ribs. Henderson dangled, boots scraping, panic in his voice. "The line! It's going!" Ramirez's face went white. The squad erupted, shouting, scrambling, but nobody moved. Nobody except me. I grabbed the backup line, clipped in without waiting for orders, and went over the edge. Rain blinded me, rope burning my hands raw, but I didn't stop. Henderson's eyes were wild when I reached him. "You'll drop us both!" he screamed. "Shut up and hold on!" I snarled, wrapping the rope around my arm, bracing my legs against the wall. My muscles tore, skin ripping, but inch by inch I hauled him back. The squad above fell silent. Even Ramirez stopped shouting. All I could hear was Henderson's ragged breath and my own pulse hammering. When we finally hit the ground, Henderson collapsed, gasping, mud caked in his teeth. I stood over him, hands shredded, chest heaving. The squad stared like they'd never seen me before. Ramirez opened his mouth, then closed it again. For once, he had nothing to say. The silence was louder than any insult they'd ever thrown. And in that silence, something shifted. For the first time since I set foot in that place, I wasn't the joke anymore. I wasn't charity case. I was the guy who held the rope when it mattered. And I knew deep down, this was just the beginning. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The sun hadn't even cleared the horizon when the word came down. Full combat simulation. Squad versus squad. Live field exercise. Everyone knew this was the big one. The evaluation that decided who stayed and who washed out. My stomach knotted as we shouldered our packs, rifles slung, faces painted with streaks of black and green. The air was heavy with the smell of wet pine and diesel from the Humvees idling nearby. This was it. Weeks of sweat and humiliation came down to this. And for me, it felt like a setup. Sergeant Ramirez barked orders, his voice echoing off the trees. "Carter, you're point man. Let's see if you can finally carry your own weight." Laughter rippled through the squad. Henderson clapped me on the shoulder, sneering. "Try not to get us killed, charity case." My throat burned, but I said nothing. Just nodded, adjusted the strap on my rifle, and stepped forward. Inside, I knew exactly what this was. Ramirez was throwing me to the wolves. Point man meant leading the patrol, scanning for traps, guiding the route. If something went wrong, it'd be on me, and everyone would love nothing more than to watch me fail. We moved out in staggered column, boots crunching over gravel, the forest swallowing us whole. The radio crackled with updates from the other squad, but all I could hear was the steady drip of sweat inside my helmet. Every rustle of leaves felt like a threat, every shadow a trick. Henderson never let up. Eyes up, Carter. Don't trip over your daddy's boots. The guys behind him chuckled. I bit my tongue, kept my eyes forward. One wrong word, one slip, and Ramirez would eat me alive. Hours dragged. We crawled through mud, low-crawled under barbed wire, scaled wooden walls slick with rain. Each time I lagged, Ramirez was there. Move it, Carter. You're slower than pond water. My chest heaved. My arms screamed. But I refused to give them the satisfaction of quitting. Miller, somewhere in the middle of the line, stayed quiet. Every so often I caught him glancing my way, not mocking, just watching, like he was waiting for something. By mid-afternoon, the heat was brutal. Sweat pooled under my armor, my shirt soaked through. We reached a ravine, deep and wide, ropes strung across for us to rappel down one side and climb up the other. I froze. My gut clenched. I remembered that frayed safety line from days ago. I'd warned Ramirez, and he'd brushed me off. I stared up at the ropes, my hands slick with sweat. What's wrong, Carter? Henderson smirked, already clipping in. Scared of heights? Or scared of failing again? Ramirez's glare cut through me. Get moving, Private. Henderson went first. Cocky grin plastered across his face, sliding down fast. Halfway down it happened. A sharp snap echoed through the ravine. His line split fibers like tearing cloth. He dangled, boots scraping the cliffside, arms flailing. The rope! It's giving! His scream sliced through the forest. Panic rippled up the line. The squad shouted, rifles clattering to the ground, but no one moved. Ramirez's face went pale, eyes wide. For once, the drill sergeant had no orders. Something inside me snapped, not the way Henderson's rope had, but harder, sharper. I unclipped, grabbed the backup line, and without waiting for anyone's word, I went over the edge. The ravine yawned below, rocks jagged like teeth, but I didn't care. I rappelled down fast, rope searing my palms raw. Henderson's eyes were wild when I reached him. You're crazy, we'll both go down. I locked eyes with him, voice low but steady. Shut up and hold on. I anchored my feet against the rock face, wrapped the rope around my arm, and started hauling. Every muscle tore, fire shooting down my shoulders, my skin ripped open by the rope. Henderson's weight dragged like an anchor, but inch by inch I pulled. His boots scraped, his curses filled the air, but I didn't stop. Above us, the squad had gone silent. Even Ramirez's voice was gone. All I heard was the blood pounding in my ears and Henderson's ragged breathing. The rope cut deeper, my vision blurred, but I hauled one last time, a scream tearing from my chest. Henderson lunged, fingers clawing at the edge. Miller reached out, grabbing Henderson's vest, pulling him over. I collapsed against the cliff wall, chest heaving, blood dripping from my hands. Henderson rolled onto his back, gasping, mud plastered across his face. He stared up at me like he'd never seen me before. You saved me, his voice cracked. For the first time, there was no mockery in it, only shock. The squad surrounded us, a mix of disbelief and silence. Nobody laughed, nobody spoke. Ramirez finally stepped forward, his jaw tight. His voice came low, almost uncertain. Get him patched up. That was it. No insult, no bark, just a command. The absence of mockery was louder than any humiliation I'd endured. Back at the aid station, the medic wrapped my shredded palms, shaking his head. You're lucky you didn't tear them clean open. Henderson sat nearby, staring at the ground, his face pale. He didn't speak, not at first. Then, barely above a whisper, he muttered, I was wrong about you. I didn't answer, didn't need to. His eyes said the rest. That night, the barracks felt different. The usual jokes, the laughter at my expense. It wasn't there. When I walked past, conversations hushed. Some looked away, others just stared. Henderson kept his mouth shut for once. Miller, as quiet as ever, caught my eye and gave the smallest nod. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud. Just respect, quiet and real. And that meant more than anything. But the real shock came the next morning. Formation, the whole company lined up, boots shined, rifles slung. Captain Wallace himself stood at the front, clipboard in hand. Yesterday's field exercise exposed failures, he said, eyes sweeping the line. Failures in equipment, failures in leadership. His gaze cut to Ramirez, who stiffened but stayed silent. But it also revealed something else. He paused, then looked straight at me. Carter, step forward. My heart hammered as I marched out, boots striking hard against the pavement. Every eye followed. Wallace's voice carried across the formation. Private Carter identified a hazard days before the incident. His warning was ignored. Yesterday, he acted without hesitation, risking his life to save another soldier. That is the definition of courage. The words hit like thunder. Courage. Me. The same recruit they'd all mocked. The same kid Ramirez had called deadweight. The squad shifted uneasily, some lowering their heads. Henderson's jaw clenched, shame in his eyes. Ramirez's face was stone, but his silence said everything. Wallace's voice sharpened. Leadership is not about barking orders. It's about recognizing strength in others, no matter where it comes from. Carter proved that yesterday. He turned to me, eyes steady. You've earned more than respect, Private. You've earned your place. The formation stood frozen. No laughter, no jeers. Just silence, heavy and undeniable. I stepped back into line, head high, shoulders squared. For the first time since I'd arrived, I didn't feel like the outsider. I felt like a soldier. And in that moment, I realized something. Respect isn't given. It's forged in the fire, in the mud, in the moments where everything is stacked against you and you refuse to break. They tried to bury me under humiliation, but I'd turned it into fuel. And now they had no choice but to see me for who I was. The story wasn't over. There were more battles ahead, more trials waiting, but that day marked the turning point. The moment when the quiet kid with the battered boots proved he was more than they ever believed. The moment the balance shifted. And nothing, not even Ramirez's scorn, could take that away. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The day after the field exercise, the barracks carried a strange silence. Normally, mornings began with jeers thrown my way, some cheap laugh at my expense. Not this time. Henderson sat on his bunk, head lowered, tracing the edge of his dog tags like he was avoiding everyone's eyes. The usual crew that mocked me kept their distance. You could feel it in the air. Things had shifted, but shifts like that never come clean. Respect isn't handed over neatly. It comes with resentment, shame, and the weight of what people don't want to admit. In the chow hall, the atmosphere was just as tense. Trays clattered, conversations buzzed. But when I walked in, the laughter dropped a notch. Henderson glanced up, eyes locking with mine for a moment, before he quickly looked back at his plate. I could almost see the storm inside him. Guilt, pride wounded, maybe even gratitude he didn't want to say out loud. Miller slid onto the bench across from me. He didn't make a show of it, just started eating. No words, no speeches. But the message was clear. I wasn't sitting alone anymore. That quiet act was louder than anything the others could have said. But Ramirez wasn't finished with me. He never was. He stood at the front of the chow hall, arms crossed, eyes burning holes through me. "Don't get comfortable, Carter," he said loud enough for half the room to hear. "One lucky break doesn't make you a soldier." The old sting of humiliation flickered, but it didn't land the same way. The squad didn't laugh this time. A few shifted in their seats, uneasy. For the first time, his words hung in the air without support. That silence was its own kind of justice. Later that day, I was called into the company office. Captain Wallace sat behind his desk. Reports spread across the surface. Ramirez stood stiffly at attention to the side, jaw tight. The captain's voice was measured, calm but sharp. "Private Carter," he said, "your actions yesterday will be noted in your record. They showed initiative and courage." My chest tightened, hearing those words. Initiative, courage. Words I'd never expected to be tied to my name here. Then his tone shifted, colder, aimed at Ramirez. "But what concerns me, Sergeant, is that this private's warning about equipment was ignored." Ramirez's face barely moved, but I saw it, the crack in his armor. He wanted to argue, but the chain of command held him in check. For once, he wasn't the one holding the hammer. Back in the barracks, the squad circled me differently. Henderson came up, his voice low, awkward. "Carter, about the rope. I'd be dead if you hadn't." He stopped, words stuck in his throat. He wasn't built for apologies. Finally, he just muttered, "Thanks," before walking off, shoulders hunched. It wasn't much, but it was everything. The same guy who'd torn me down for weeks was now stumbling under the weight of respect he couldn't quite show. That was a battle I'd never thought I'd win. The real moment came during evening drill. The whole platoon stood at attention, rifles slung, eyes forward. Ramirez, voice booming as always, called out names. Then Captain Wallace stepped forward, something unusual in his tone. "Yesterday, Private Carter risked his life to save a fellow soldier. He acted with courage when others froze. That deserves recognition." He nodded toward Ramirez. "Sergeant, front and center." Ramirez's jaw flexed, but he obeyed, stepping beside the captain. For a heartbeat, you could see it in his eyes. He knew what was coming. The captain's voice carried across the field. "Sergeant Ramirez, it's easy to shout orders, harder to listen. You ignored a soldier's warning. That nearly cost a life." The platoon stiffened. Nobody had ever heard a captain dress down a sergeant like that in front of everyone. Ramirez's face went stone white. Then Wallace turned to me. "Carter, step forward." My boots felt heavy, but I marched out, every step echoing, "Yesterday, you showed what leadership really means. Leadership isn't rank, it's responsibility, and you carried it." The silence that followed was explosive. No laughter, no whispers. Just every soldier on that field staring at me, their view of me shattered and rebuilt in real time. Ramirez stood there, jaw locked, forced to swallow the humiliation. He'd been feeding me for weeks. That was the moment everything flipped. The man who'd broken me down in front of everyone was now being called out himself. The balance of power shifted in a way you could feel in your bones. When drill ended, nobody rushed off. Henderson walked past me, clapped a hand on my shoulder, then kept moving without a word. Miller gave me that same quiet nod, but this time it wasn't pity. It was respect. And Ramirez. He didn't look my way. He couldn't. That night in the barracks, the air was different. Not easy, not friendly, but different. The jeers were gone. The silence wasn't cruel anymore. It was heavy, loaded with unspoken acknowledgement. For the first time, I felt the ground under my feet steady. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the punchline. I was a soldier who'd proven himself in the mud, under fire when it counted. And as I lay in my bunk, staring at the ceiling, the locket in my hand, I thought about my father, about how he'd carried himself with pride no matter who doubted him. Maybe I was finally walking that same path. Maybe this was what he meant when he said strength isn't in words. It's in standing tall when the world tries to shove you down. But deep down, I also knew this wasn't the end. Respect can be given in silence, but trust takes time. And as much as I'd earned a place that day, I understood something else. The fight to prove yourself never really ends. The Army will always test you. The question is whether you break or whether you keep standing. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The last week of training came quiet. Not in the drills, we still ran until our legs shook. Still crawled through gravel until our elbows bled. But quiet in the way the others treated me. The laughter was gone. The whispers behind my back were gone too. In their place was something heavier, silence, but not the kind that cut. This silence carried weight, respect, or maybe shame. Either way, it meant they'd seen me for what I was, and they couldn't laugh it away anymore. One night in the barracks, Henderson walked over. He'd never come near my bunk before unless it was to shove my gear or take a shot at me. This time he stood there a long moment, dog tags twisting in his fingers. "Carter," he said finally, his voice low, "I owe you. I don't even know how to say it. You saved my life." He swallowed hard, the words scraping out. "And I treated you like trash." I looked up at him, waiting. The room was quiet, the others listening but pretending not to. "I was wrong," he muttered. "You didn't deserve that." Then, almost too soft to hear, he added, "Thank you." He didn't wait for me to answer, just walked back to his bunk, shoulders slumped. But those words stuck. They were worth more than all his insults combined. Miller never said much, but he didn't need to. The next morning, as we fell into formation, he slid in beside me instead of hanging back with the others. He didn't look my way, didn't speak, but just standing there next to me, it was his way of saying, "You're not alone anymore." And for me, that was enough. But the real moment came during our final formation. Captain Wallace stood in front of us, the American flag snapping in the wind behind him. His voice carried, steady and sharp. This cycle began with doubts. Some of you questioned each other. Some of you mocked and judged before you knew what a man was made of. His eyes swept the line. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then his gaze landed on me. Private Carter stood against that. Not with words, not with bravado, but with action, with sacrifice. That is what makes a soldier. The platoon stood frozen, but I felt it. Every eye on me. The shift I'd been waiting for since day one. Ramirez, standing off to the side, kept his face hard, but even he didn't interrupt. For once, his silence wasn't scorn, it was acknowledgement, and that was louder than anything he'd ever barked at me. After we were dismissed, I walked back to the barracks slow, the locket heavy in my hand. I thought about my father, about the man everyone said never bent, never broke. Maybe I'd finally earned a piece of that legacy. Henderson nodded as I passed, not mocking, not bitter, just a nod. Miller clapped me on the back, the kind of simple gesture soldiers share when words aren't enough. The next morning before the sun broke, I stood outside alone. The flag lifted in the breeze, the base still wrapped in silence. I raised my hand, gave it a slow, steady salute. Not because anyone was watching, not because I wanted recognition, but because I finally understood. Strength isn't about the noise others make when they doubt you. It's about standing tall anyway. It's about carrying the weight even when your legs shake. And in the end, it's about honor, the kind nobody can take from you. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The last image I'll leave you with is simple. A young soldier standing beneath the American flag at dawn, boots planted firm in the dirt, hand raised in a salute. No cheering crowd, no music, no grand ceremony, just the sound of wind tugging at the colors above him and the quiet presence of his brothers around him. Even the drill sergeant, the same man who once mocked him, gives the smallest nod. In that silence, something greater than words is spoken. Respect, brotherhood, honor. That's what this story has always been about. The weight of injustice, the sting of prejudice, the quiet endurance of someone mocked and underestimated, and then the moment when silence breaks, not with anger, not with loud speeches, but with action that cannot be denied. Because in the end, actions speak louder than words. You can shout all day about who belongs and who doesn't, but when the rope is breaking, when a life hangs in the balance, only the one who steps forward proves the truth. Every soldier knows what it means to carry doubt on their back, to feel judged before they even take a step. But we also know that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Hardship forges steel. Mockery hardens resolve. And when the moment of truth comes, a person's true measure is revealed in the choices they make. That's dignity. That's resilience. That's brotherhood. The bond that rises when the smoke clears and we see each other for who we really are. So if this story touched something in you, I'd like to hear it. Share your thoughts, your own experiences, in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button to show your support and subscribe so you won't miss the next stories we bring to life. Until then, stay strong, stay proud, and remember, you're never alone in this journey.